Brian Williams back here with you. We're live in New York, and we have been live since first word arrived of tonight's U.S., French, British military strike on 3 different chemical weapon-related targets in Syria. We are right now going to be able to speak for the first time since the attack with someone live on the ground in Damascus who has witnessed what has happened there tonight. Danny Makki is an independent journalist in Damascus. He's been in communication with our own Cal Perry, who speaks independent journalist, and Danny has been able to join us via Skype. Danny, I know there will be a substantial satellite delay, so I'll just ask you, what indications, what did you first see and feel? How did you know the attack was underway?
Well, at around 4:30 in the early hours of this morning, I was awoken by a series of large consecutive bangs, which shook my entire neighborhood. And from then on, I instantly knew that it was a US-led attack, because these sounds were very different to the usual sounds of war that you hear in Damascus. And they were very large and very consecutive. So after the initial 10 or 11 rockets which landed, there was a period of about 5 minutes where you had Syrian air defenses trying to fire at these missiles. You had Shelker tracer fire being fired into the sky against these rockets, and S-200s, which are stationed quite near to the location I'm in. So I could hear that they were being fired at the rockets coming in. After that, there was a period of about 20 minutes where you had more consecutive strikes on different military locations, and for the duration of the actual strike was about 50 minutes long. The entirety of all of the attacks around Damascus and further up north, reportedly in Hama. So what we clearly know so far is that 3 main military sites and military targets have been targeted. The first of those is a research facility in East Damascus in an area called Berze, and that's a research facility lab where you've had accusations of chemical weapons being researched there, and etc. The second location was Mezze Military Airport, which is the only airport of military nature within the center of Damascus. And the third one was a research lab near to where I am in the west of Damascus called Jamraya. And that's also a very large complex of military research buildings. Now, I could hear the last one very clearly because the rockets landed in an area very close to me. So as you can tell, as we're taking stock of what's happened in Damascus, these first initial 3 military targets have been clearly struck. We've heard also reports from Homs and Hama of a suspected facility being targeted in Masyaf, which is related to chemical research. Another one in Homs, where Russian air defenses have also participated with Syrian air defenses in deterring some of the rockets being fired there. But throughout the duration of the 50 minutes, Syrian air defenses continue to fire into the sky. And what we initially hear is 13 rockets have reportedly been downed. Now, this may be exaggerated. However, it is consistent with the reporting and the sound which I was hearing of tracers and missiles being fired into the sky. But the attacks have taken place, and it's clear that they've been limited to the 3 major sites within Damascus in an unprecedented attack. For the first time in the history of Damascus and Syria and this war, the U.S. has targeted sites within and around central Damascus.
Danny, is it possible to hit any of these locations that the U.S., France, and the U.K. targeted tonight without collateral damage, without killing either citizens who live in the area or the military night shift on guard, on watch, on duty at the time when these landed?
Well, in regards to the 3 sites, I can give you a quick analysis of how it went down. The first site in Berze, which is in East Damascus, is in quite a populated area, so it would have been heard, and there perhaps may be civilian casualties. We can't confirm that at the moment. The second strike in Mezze Military Airport is a strictly military site, which isn't near any real residential areas. It's quite a large base and quite cordoned off. So it's conspicuous that there may be military casualties in that particular location, but from what I've been reporting and hearing over the previous 3 to 4 days is that airbase in particular has seen an emptying of sophisticated technology such as warplanes and some missiles to other secure locations or to Russian bases. So I doubt the damage is too significant. Now, in the third base in Jamraya, which is a huge section on its own in western Damascus. It's not really near any civilian areas. This was, in fact, Jamraya was the first location the Israelis targeted in 2014, if you remember. So it was clearly an area of very sensitive and significant military importance. Now, that area in particular has been denied by state media, but according to what I've been hearing, because of the proximity of the site to where I am now, an area in western Damascus was definitely struck because the sound was huge. It shook the entire neighborhood, and my house, the windows were shaking for a couple of minutes at least. So that's what we can clearly know, is that these areas, there may be civilian casualties around, but it's mainly strictly limited military sites. There hasn't been anything within an area where you could argue the vicinity is an area where the civilian residents live, or where it's a civilian area. In Homs and Hama, there have been several reports of attacks, but none of it has really been confirmed, and it's further away than Damascus. So it will take some time to understand exactly how things are planned out. But what I can tell you is that these attacks have definitely and conspicuously taken Damascus by surprise, because we were expecting, being here, I've been here for 3 months, we were expecting a de-escalation of the situation on Syria over the previous 3 days. We weren't expecting an attack to happen today, especially after the different messages being sent out by Russia, by the French, and by Trump, and the fact that Trump has stated that there would be an attack, but he hasn't specified exactly when. We thought the Russians were taking diplomacy on board and this would be solved differently. But to our amazement, the attack happened today, and for a duration of 50 minutes, different sites within Damascus and possibly around Syria were targeted by planes and missiles. I could confirm that I heard warplanes in the sky as well as missiles which were being fired. So that ultimately adds to the fact that it was a two-pronged attack using warplanes and missiles. And whilst we take stock of the events here, it'll be clear to see exactly what the damage is within Damascus and what the destruction is and how this pans out in terms of a possible response for Syria, Russia and Iran over the next few days and weeks. I suspect that any response will be very calm and will definitely take into account the issue of timing, and may perhaps be in other areas. We've got US troops stationed within Syria, so there's definitely a lot to consider in this period, and if there is a response, how it will be and whether it will take time. But for now, we're just taking stock of the numerous US attacks on different sites within Damascus and within broader Syria. And as initially we can tell that 3 strikes, targeted strikes of consecutive rocket attacks have targeted 3 main military sites within Damascus for the first time, and the monitoring of the situation is continuing until we gather more information.
Well, Danny, this has been very valuable to us to hear your reporting. I'm about to ask an experienced warrior about some of your findings you just reported. We hate like hell what's happened to your country and the loss of innocent life there. We're glad you're okay, and we thank you for reporting to us and, by extension, our audience watching all across the country tonight after tonight's military strike. Danny Makki with us from, as we heard, Too Close for Comfort tonight to some of the impacts in Damascus.